Welcome to the Battle Plan, and today we have Jesse Gould, who is a pioneer in the psychedelic therapies. As founder and president of Heroic Heart Project, he has spearheaded the research and acceptance of ayahuasca therapy programs for military veterans. Jesse has raised over $250,000 in scholarships from donors, including Dr. Bronner's, partnered with the world's leading ayahuasca treatment centers, and is researching psychiatric applications with the University of Colorado Boulder and the University of Georgia. His mission is to help military veterans struggling with mental health trauma and spread awareness of the benefits of ayahuasca therapies offer as an alternative treatment to pharmaceutical. Jesse has spoken globally about the benefits of psychedelics on mental health and has been featured in the New York Times, wow, that's impressive, and recognized as one of the social entrepreneurs to watch for in 2020 by Cause Artists. Jesse, welcome to the Battle Plan. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Bruno. Good to talk to you again. Glad to be here.
I'm super excited about this because this is something that is actually happening a lot in the veterans world, the psychedelic route and the plant medicine, what we talk about. So thank you so much for accepting to be on the show. And we're going to start by tell us about you, your unique story. What got you there?
Yeah, of course. Again, thanks for having me. It's definitely an honor. Love talking to you. So yeah, I come from the U.S. My background. Originally, I was in business or investment banking, actually, degree in economics. But around that time, I wanted to join the military. And so I kind of took a hold on the banking side and enlisted in the U.S. Army. I became an Army Ranger, which is a special operations unit within the U.S. military. And so Rangers are a direct action infantry unit. And so I was there for a number of years, which included 3 deployments to Afghanistan. And I was a mortarman in charge of over 30 people across Afghanistan and the U.S. And overall, I got a lot out of my military service. It really made me into the person I am today, and, brings that confidence that very few other experiences really can. But when I got out, like many other veterans, I started noticing that I wasn't operating at peak performance. I ended up trying to go back, adjust to civilian life, found a job as a financial analyst at a big international company. And on the outside, if you were to just look at me, especially on like an Instagram version, everything was going well. I was in Tampa, Florida. I was doing well, had a great job, had a great network, supportive family, all that kind of stuff. But under the surface, there was definitely this sort of dark cloud emerging, or had been there for a while, that was really starting to affect my life. And I think just sort of the combination of being from Ranger to corporate world, the screeching halt of those breaks really put some things into perspective that I would have to deal with. And so, like, similar to a lot of veterans, I was just really being affected by a lot of anxiety, going into depression, just general unhappiness with life, self-medicating with alcohol to excessive amounts, just really trying to get past this wall that, one, I couldn't identify, and 2, I had no idea what was about it. And so I tried all sorts of things. I knew that something was wrong. And so I tried exercising, I tried, hobbies, social life, everything, journaling, meditation, and, everything helps, but it just couldn't get me past the major obstacle. And so then I went to the USVA, Department of Veteran Affairs, and unfortunately, they weren't really able to help me if I wasn't willing to go on medication. And so I was just sort of left in this situation where I was struggling pretty severely, and there just were not options available to me, or they were just very limited. And so that led me on sort of this path that I am currently still on, to where, again, I knew I was just at this point in my life where I was just making unhealthy decisions. And if I continued on it, I would more than likely just end up in a very bad spot, or doing something that, you can't reverse. And I just knew it was sort of a critical point. And so, at that point, I heard about this thing called ayahuasca. And so for those that are not familiar, ayahuasca is a psychedelic that at its most basic form comes from the combination of two Amazonian plants. And so it dates back thousands of years from Amazonian culture, Peru, Brazil, Ecuador, Colombia, across those countries, used by indigenous tribes for the health of the community, of the tribe. And it's become kind of popular since the 90s in Western culture. Sort of, we rediscovered something that's already been there, which is a funny way of putting it. And so,
yeah.
so a lot of people have been going there. You know, one, just I guess more for the psychedelic exploration, but two, what they've seen and why people are, or why it's becoming very popular, is that it has been having a pretty tremendous healing effect, especially in a therapeutic sort of side. So I heard about it. My background is never had experience with psychedelics, didn't define myself or identify myself with that at all. No drug use at all. Fine for other people, not for me. But like I said, it was that critical point, and I was like, man, I don't know what that is, but I gotta try something, because I know this isn't. I know my course is pretty bad right now, and so, you know, fortunately, I did. I took that leap of faith. I did research, found a spot that I felt comfortable going, left my job, left my home, packed up my bags, and took that one-way trip to Peru to sort of figure myself out, figure my stuff out, and you know, fortunately, I did.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, because you brought up so many things. I think that like I said at the beginning, a lot of veterans are seeking this alternative route now than the typical medical side of things. Not just saying that, like I always say it, I meet a lot of vets over in Canada and the States, Australia, and everything, and we're very similar. Everybody's struggling with the same things. They're having a hard time transitioning and all these things. And of course, we trust the medical system, and they are there to take care of us. They definitely do. I don't believe that anybody in the system is doing anything malicious. They just want to help. They just want to do things, but they're using the tools that they have on their hands. And you're right. People are actually founding that there's alternative ways out there. Like you said, it's funny because it was just discovered in the 90s, but it's been around for hundreds of years. The Amazonian people have been using that in Peru. And what I really love about what you brought is you brought two perspectives of what a veteran looks like, in my eyes, of my experience, because I was very similar to you. We didn't do drugs before. We weren't part of that. We weren't doing these things. So we're always not looking. That's not our first avenue, because we've associated, like everybody else, that a drug is a drug and it's a bad thing for you and all these things. But we both did research, our own research. What does that mean to us? And why don't you take us down maybe a little bit of that? What was the first things you looked at? What brought you ayahuasca? Where did you hear it the first time and everything? Because you did. One of my questions was like, would you tell our audience what ayahuasca is? Because it's a weird name. It's out of Peru and everything. But what was the first thing that made you look at that instead of, let's say, Ativan or the medication that was out there?
Yeah, of course. And I'll add on a little bit to what you're saying as well, is that, you know, my journey, and I think a lot of other veterans, is that we see what PTSD or mental struggles looks like, and it's often the sort of social way that we view it, or what you see in movies and stuff like that. And so a lot of veterans don't associate with that, because they're like, well, I mean, nobody died in my arms. I wasn't in like a Saving Private Ryan situation. Like, I don't have PTSD. And so along this journey, I've especially found is that mental trauma comes in many forms, and it may not necessarily be PTSD, but there's all sorts of different things affecting veterans. And so there's a ton of veterans that are struggling. It's just they are not either properly diagnosed, or they don't want to be under that category. And so it's coming to terms with that, because I was in that exact same category of like, you know, that's not me. So in terms of medication, I agree with you. You know, the VA are trying their best, and some of these medications have saved lives. You know, it's just, the question is, we don't have a lot of tools. And so in my opinion, and the opinion of many, is that they are using these medications too often for a wide variety of cases that they may not necessarily understand, you know? And so for some people, it can be the perfect thing, but especially in the US, there has been a lot of documented cases where guys are on 15 different medications and they're not working. So it does tend to be sort of the sledgehammer approach of like, oh, you have this catch-all, like let's just throw some medication at it, hope it works out. And so that, because I was able to still like manage and obviously struggling, but I could hold it together. So I didn't want to go down the medication route for me. It was a personal decision. And like I said, it can be helpful, but there's also a lot of negative side effects that I've just seen in a lot of guys. And that's not really the path I wanted to go down. And also once you kind of go down that, it can be pretty hard to get out of sort of the medication draw once you kind of get stuck into that. So I was looking, I just knew that there had to be some other way. And like I said, ayahuasca has become more popular. Psychedelics in general has become more popular with research coming about and just, used in Silicon Valley, used in movies, all this kind of stuff. And because I came from it in the sense of not associating myself with drugs or psychedelics, ayahuasca, I think, provided that little crack that my brain could convince itself that it was okay. If I were to pursue, even cannabis or LSD, for me, still very entrenched in my mind is that those were, drugs. Those were
bad.
like,
those were bad.
yeah. Those were like escapism. Those were like me not addressing my problems, just like another form. And that's not what I wanted to do. I was already, avoiding my problems with alcohol as best as possible.
Right.
But since ayahuasca had this rich, like, cultural dynamic to it, this history, this use among tribal societies, ceremony around it, this beautiful culture, in my mind is like something that I could approach as almost a exploration or a cultural sort of journey, as well as the psychedelic approach, as opposed to me sitting in a basement taking acid or something like that. So I think that sort of like, even if it's a stupid way, like a lot of times we need to almost convince our brains of doing something that maybe deep down we know that could be beneficial. And so that allowed me to do it, because I've been to South America before. I love it. Just wanted to go back, and I was like, all right, well, I know I'm going to leave my job. I know like whatever I'm doing right now is not working. So let's travel a little bit. Maybe that will sort of help the reflection. And then since I'm there, let's just take this leap of faith. Some people swear by it. So who am I to say, this is not what it is. At the very least, I knew it would be something. I knew it'd be pretty impactful, and the way that it would be is hard to say. And so that's kind of that path I went. But then that opened my mind, my acceptance of that a lot of these things that they can still be used recreationally, but if you use them in the right setting with the right intentions, a lot of these drugs can be quite powerful on the therapeutic side.
And I absolutely agree. And that's the thing. And I think that now going forward, to make it a little bit more acceptable, we're using plant medicine and all these things. And funny enough is that I don't think I've ever seen ayahuasca being used recreationally. I think it's everything I've heard and I've researched and everything is that it's been used as a medical setting, as in, let's remove some of your trauma, let's remove or heal something or whatever. And it's always was a ceremony. That's why myself as well, Jesse, is that I went down that route. I did the research. I try to find everything. For me, I was seeing a mental health, a psychologist, and he was from South America. And so it was in his culture, and we were talking, we were doing some really good work. He was actually one of the ones of my mental health professional that actually was pretty good, very good, actually. And he did bring it up one day, and that was I would say in 2011, just to give a perspective of what guys and girls can expect of the research and what goes on through our minds, which we'll talk about, is basically, he said to me about ayahuasca, and right away I just brushed it off. I said, well, listen, like, because he told me what could happen and the purge and all this stuff and the ceremony. I was like, I'm not down with this foo-foo stuff, right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like shamans, and now we're talking shamans. All right, great. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is at the time, it's very important to mention, you got to be ready. You got to be, like you were saying, like our mindset is different. We're a lot of veterans are rigid. They follow structure. They follow the rules. They do these things and they try to do that. But it took about, I would say that I started researching it again. That was in 2011. I would say in 2016 16, and I researched it for like 2 years. And then I went and did it here locally. And I did 2 sessions of 2 nights. And then it once again, it's which I would like to talk to you about how Heroic Hearts does it, because that's what I really love about you, because there were some parts missing on mine about the setup, the setting, what you need, the intention and expectation, right? We need to talk about that, because I had high expectations. And of course, when you do, what do you think happens? Nothing, right?
Yeah, disappointment.
Your disappointment and all these things. And I think that if we're gonna, educate the audience and the veterans out there of, if you want to take that route, then make sure you do your proper research and what should it look like and everything. So for you, how was your first experience?
Yeah, so
because you flew out to South America. Sorry.
Yeah, I flew to South America. Like I said, I needed the big change in my life, and so I wanted to do it because I had that possibility. And so I was like, all right, well, let's go where this all came from. So I did this, same kind of thing, as much research as possible. And at that stage, what I was looking for was just like, as much as possible, is this recommended? Like, is this a safe spot? There's a few I was looking over, and I think the one that I ended up making the decision was, there was an application process. There was sort of a vetting. They weren't just looking for your credit card information right off the bat. And for me, that indicated like, this is actually, they're serious about it and not just doing like a vacation travel experience, like you're doing this kind of thing.
Because so it's now a big tourism attraction over in South America, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's that combination. Like there is money to be made there, and so you're getting all sorts of different players with good intentions, bad intentions, exploitive, but others that are doing it right and being sustainable and all that kind of stuff. And we can go into that. That's sort of the role Heroic Hearts plays now in terms of helping veterans figure out which spots they rely on. For me, again, not coming from any experience, it was definitely a earth shattering sort of experience.
Please go in detail. Let us know.
Mine was over the course of a week, and there's the potential for 4 ceremonies over the course of that week, which again, we kind of recommend because it allows you to really get into deeper layers, and especially the first one tends to be sort of that shake up and you're like, what the hell is that? And then as you go through it, you can kind of like unravel different layers of trauma and different answers and all that kind of stuff. And so my first experience was just all out war. The first 2 ceremonies, the second one being even worse. And I couldn't imagine how the first one could be worse, but it showed me how it could be worse. And for me, it was just, especially with ayahuasca, it's very interesting because it affects everybody very uniquely, and it can take all sorts of forms. Purging or puking tends to be one of the more common ones. And so, definitely had that. And then for me, it was very physical. There was the traditional, what we associate with psychedelics. And for people who don't know, the main psychoactive component in ayahuasca is DMT. And so DMT is kind of, in some circles, referred to as the spirit molecule of the psychedelics. It does tend to have this sort of awe factor where, whether you want to call it spirituality or connectedness or what have you, there is this sort of like, wow, this is the grand scheme of things, and I'm just a piece of this, but like a small piece, but there is connection there. And so there's interesting parts of that, but that's sort of a tangent. Very physical, the traditional.
We're all about tangents here.
Yeah, the traditional psychedelic kind of like shapes and colors and intensity and all that sort of stuff, and the images. But for me, just very uncomfortable, shaking, couldn't sit still, constantly nauseous and just overwhelmed. The second one was even worse, just like, it shook me, and it actually kind of scared me a little bit, just because, but that's sort of the point,
Mm-hmm.
The reason why this can be effective is that, as you say, a lot of veterans tend to be pretty strong-willed, and my brain, and we're very controlling. We like to control the situation, the scenario, know everything. We don't like to relinquish control at all, but you need to through this process. And because oftentimes part of that control, you're also controlling your trauma, you're compartmentalizing it, you're keeping in the spot to where it's still affecting you, but you're not allowing it to be released. And so part of this is that you have to submit to it in a way. And those that don't submit, like myself, it will make you submit. It'll keep pushing. It'll keep blasting you with the stuff you don't want to hear, the stuff you don't want to see, until you go into it, until you like allow it, and you're just like, all right, I'm done with this. I've suffered enough. I don't have the energy anymore to do it. And you have to tend to get to that point. And then once you do, then there's that relief of it. There's that either the realizations, the profound realizations, also the physical relief. And so that's sort of what I experienced in the third ceremony after being, rocked and pretty afraid actually, but I went right back in. And it started off pretty intense, but then through the ceremony, it almost taught me how to like let go. It was almost like a trial by error where I'd still go back and like be miserable, and then it'd allow me to kind of go to this calm spot of like, okay, this is how you release energy. And it's hard to explain for people who don't understand it, but the closest I can kind of relate to it is, especially for me, anxiety was a big one. And part of it was, it's almost like a muscle in your brain that you either never learned or it never got exercised. And so through my process, through this ceremony, it was almost like showing me where that muscle was in my brain and exercising it to the point that once I was able to do it, then I could go into that calm spot. I could go into that tranquility.
Wow.
I could not be controlled by, I wouldn't necessarily be overwhelmed by my anxiety. And so that is something I was able to like maintain, because even afterwards, when I would feel anxiety or a panic attack or what have you, or hypervigilance come on, because of that process, I was able to almost like sweep it away, or I was able to have that control over it.
What you're saying is that even though that you're no longer doing the ayahuasca, let's just say you're back home now, you can actually activate that and let it go. So it gave you a tool to do even after. So it was residual teaching, basically.
Exactly. And that's, that's the whole point of, that's the reason why we were pushing this so much, is because there is those lasting benefits. And so, and it seems to work on multiple layers. We're working with some universities, as you mentioned at the beginning, to try to figure out the mechanisms. But, not only that part, but there also does seem to be a physical dynamic to it, to where, with a lot of veterans, myself included, where it either balances out certain hormone levels or reduces inflammation, to where you see drastic reduction in hypervigilance, you see drastic reduction in things that normally cause anger or anxiety. And so it's the same in myself of, I'd be back after this, months afterwards, and I'd be in a similar situation that I had been in before. And like, let's say a bar, and just being surrounded by people, you kind of get that like, you go into yourself, you like don't want to be anyone to be close to you. Like, I have to have a few drinks just to be able to cope with that. Yeah. And I'd be in that same sort of situation, just hanging out, and I noticed something was missing. And the thing that was missing was that I no longer reacted that same way. I no longer had that flurry of anxiety. It was almost like it didn't react that way. And so for me, and what we're discovering now, is that it seemed to have actually chemically affected my brain and the way I react to certain stimuli.
So it released your central nervous system. There's a lot of science now, studies going into that actually, there's a very good book out there called The Body Keeps the Score, right? Mm-hmm. As in how we actually imprint in our bodies the anxiety feelings and everything, and now we become addicted to it, and we're actually looking for it. And a lot of vets can say that we'll start having some really good times, and they're like, you know what, this has been too many good times, something must go wrong, and we actually look for it. So I like that, and I like how you explained to it. First of all, after two nights like this, your first 2 nights, for you to go back a third and a fourth, it's what we do as veterans to take it on and to do this, but a lot of people might step off of that. So thank you for being honest and opening up. In contrast, what you said about veterans trying to take control is why, for me, my experience with ayahuasca was different, because I wouldn't let go, Jesse. So thank you for
Yeah.
educating me today, because those 4 sessions I did was I wouldn't let go. I was looking at where people were going. I was looking at other people. I was trying to, doing these things. Something was happening physically, like you said, but I never fell asleep. I never went through it. In the sense, but now I understand that I need to, accept it and let go, which is something that I can say in the veterans world, we're having a really hard time of letting go stuff. So maybe the plant, mother ayahuasca, like they say, will teach us. So,
Yeah, it's tricky, and that's kind of what we're trying to do. Is the better prepared you are, the more you understand sort of the process, the more when you go into it, if you have no idea and you just go into that, you're going to be overwhelmed and just like, I have no idea what's going on. But if you have some guidelines and tips, then with a lot of the vets, we've really found an increase in how well they do through the experience, just through that, the preparation,
absolutely,
pre-integration, and then the follow-up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. And that's what brings me to how we got connected and why I'm so excited about heroic, these H's in English, Heroic Heart Project, and how we're bringing it up to Canada and everything. But let's talk about how important setting and having a really good organization is taking care of you. And not only that, which will bring us into your organization, how you are even doing things different for veterans, as in the pre, the during, and the post of what goes on of those ceremonies. If you want to walk us down that road.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, it's like anything else. Psychedelics, ayahuasca, or psilocybin, or what have you, they're all tools, right? And so, like any other tool, if you use it incorrectly or you're using it in the wrong context, it's probably not going to be as effective as what your intention is. And so, we've over the years developed this whole protocol program of just what I was saying, like setting people up for success. Mm-hmm. So on one side of that is us, myself, or some member of our team going to these actual settings of various psychedelics, and that's including ayahuasca. We've worked with some psilocybin retreats. We're working with ketamine clinics. And so just understanding the whole nature of it, like the different techniques, the different hypotheses around it, how people use it, and what we think or what we've seen works best with veterans. Because like you said, we have some similarities, and sometimes, especially that control, it takes a certain approach to get to it that works for veterans that may not work for other people, and vice versa. And so the going into it, it's really about understanding what it is. And I think you kind of mentioned this before, is that it's not our job to push people. It's not our job to prescribe this to anybody. The person has to be at that right time. They have to come to us, because ideally they go through all the ceremonies, or at least the vast majority of ceremonies, to get the full effect out of it. And it can be tough. And so the person has to be willing, has to be at that stage of their healing where they're just like, hey, I'm willing to do anything. I want to get to the other side of this. If they're kind of iffy on it, then, they might have that scary first experience and then walk away, and that doesn't do anybody any good, right? And so us is really, going through our applicants. We have a whole application process, figuring out where people are, one, making sure it's safe, because there are some kind of indications that can be dangerous and normal, if they have heart conditions, what have you. Talking with people. So we have coaches, integration coaches that are experienced with this. And so it's really getting to know the person and getting them comfortable. No matter what, everybody's going to go into this with nerves. It's like the prize fight. You're fighting yourself, and there's no better competitor. And so you're going to be like nervous as you would in that sort of setting. But if you have information and you have sort of this guidelines, tips and tricks, breathing techniques, all that kind of stuff, you kind of know what you're getting into, and you can hit the ground running. Like what you're saying, just knowing that you have to sort of submit, and maybe that's going to be on your mind. And so you'll be looking for ways to do that. Then, we help them out with logistics. Obviously, a lot of vets that are in similar positions tend to have financial struggles as well. And so we provide financial grants to help get them to these spots. The retreats we work with, they're like-minded. They're all about the therapy side of things and pushing it. And they have expertise, been doing it for a long time. And then on the tail end, it's called the integration phase. So ideally, through this process, veterans will have some profound insights. They'll see sort of their life and almost a zoomed out third person. They'll see maybe some negative patterns that they've been getting caught in. They'll have some new ways of viewing it, new ideas, new resolutions. And so now the post phase is about follow up and holding them accountable and helping them interpret, because especially ayahuasca of the psychedelics can be a little bit metaphorical or vague. And so there's some things that might just be like a dream. It doesn't mean anything, but there's other things that maybe, okay, maybe there's thematic of that. So let's explore why you keep seeing that, why you keep feeling that. Really just getting people to sort of like process inwards, because that's the key to all of this.
Inward reflection about what does that mean to me and everything.
So it's like what you're saying with the book, The Body Keeps Score. The reason why the people come to us is they know that there's something wrong. So it's really like helping them learn the language of their body, of their subconscious, of, okay, this is bothering me, this is causing me anxiety, why is that? Maybe I should avoid this, or maybe there's ways I can process this. Just having that better connection to your whole body, to your whole mind. And like I said, that accountability. So we have the coaches, we have group Zoom calls, and so it's really just the group helping other veterans get through this and hold them accountable. Because no matter what, life's still going to be hard. You're still going to have anxiety, you're still going to have depression, it's still going to slap you in the face every once in a while. It's just a question of not letting it overwhelm you, not letting it steamroll you. And more often, way more often than not, this sort of process with people who take it seriously have that extra advantage of how to overcome, to where they're not just steamrolled by their anger, by their anxiety, by life.
Yeah, totally. Very, very, very good insights, Jesse. And the thing is that for the listeners that's out there, what would be an ideal candidate? Where in their transitions, like for you, like, right, when you found that you went back to work and you were doing all the right things that, we'll put in quotation, the right thing you're supposed to do, transitioning, go get a civilian jobs, go do these things and all that. Excuse me. But not everybody is at that stage, right? Like both you and I help veterans. So we find them in their living room, in their basement. Some of them did go back to work. Some of them going back to school, starting their businesses and everything. Where is usually the people that are ready to go on these trips? Because it's traveling as well. Not every veteran's ready to travel, especially to a country down in South America. Maybe it'll bring back some memories or something like that. So where would be the ideal candidate? At which level in their transition could they be? And if they're not there, what needs to be done?
So, I mean, if it can start at any time. People like yourself, like your story, if they are interested, then they should start looking into it, doing research. And, I can go into sort of the expectation. You want to do research to kind of understand and plant that seed in your head, but you don't want to I don't recommend veterans just looking at all the testimonials, because then that tends to prep them of like, oh, I want that. I want this exactly to be healed.
It's exactly what happened to me, right?
It doesn't work that way. Yeah. It doesn't. They always say it's the healing you need, not the healing you want, but you should be familiar of like kind of looking into it, reading. We have our website, we have information there. And so just start the process. And then what often happens is that there's some part of your body, your subconscious, that at some point you just be like, all right, I was a little bit nervous, but I think now's the time. Like I just can't get past this barrier. In terms of the veterans, we really prefer vets that have tried other means in terms of not necessarily medication, but talk therapy, exercise, healthy lifestyle. They've tried. They
have somewhat of a recovery journey ongoing.
Just because it's good for them, and they can also see what's out there. And so they tend to appreciate it more when they do have these breakthroughs, as opposed to not trying anything. And you're like, okay, cool. But it also indicates to us that this person is willing to put in the work, right? And like I said, it takes that work before and afterwards. This is just like a tool, a very effective tool. But if you aren't willing to put in the work, if you go from Peru straight back to the bar and, hang out and do all the same negative patterns and, just eat McDonald's every day, it's probably not going to be as effective as you're like, oh, I know the gift I've been given here. I'm going to take this and run with it. So
basically saying to the guys out there, and I had to say that a couple of times, this is not a trip you go to get high. This is not something that you're just going to go because it's either free to you or, you got nothing else to do or something like that. There's definitely some intention and some willingness to do the work that needs to happen.
And it's not a magic pill. Like, it's not just like, poof, I'm better, I'm back to where it was. It's a whole process. The mental health is a lifetime decision, a lifetime practice. It's not just like, I'm going to decide to be healthy today and let's see how it goes. And so that's what we're looking for. It's sort of that maturity. It's sort of that, those people that embody that warrior spirit, like you said, like they're willing to go in, they're willing to do the whole program and hit it charging. You know, if people are still kind of in that stage of their trauma where they're blaming everybody else, they're not taking any accountability for some of the bad decisions, then, you know, this might not be the next step for them. If they are too bad, like if they're in that extreme spot where, you know, actively suicidal and just, you know, have very little foundation, again, unfortunately, this is probably not the next best step. We kind of view a lot of these psychedelics, especially ayahuasca on the scale, tends to be one of the more powerful ones.
Yeah.
They're almost kind of chaos factors. And a little bit of chaos in your head can actually be a very good thing because it resets some things.
Thing perspectives and everything, yeah.
Right. So it can kind of get you out of these negative patterns, these negative loops, and allow you to forge a new, healthier path, right? And so there is that sort of chaos where it's like, okay, well, now I have the opportunity to forge this new path. I'm not beholden to these sort of negative addictions or thought patterns that I had before. This is on me. But that being said, you need to have that foundation. Like if there is that chaos, you need to have that foundation to return to, that resilience. So if you don't have any of that and your whole life is chaotic and you're chaotic too, more chaos into that mixture is not the best thing. So that's sort of what our assessment is like I said, people that have tried, they're pretty stable, they have foundation, they could still be suffering a lot and still be, you know, really hindered by their trauma, but they need to have that sort of like baseline foundation.
Awesome. Great. That is fantastic because it's a conversation that needs to happen, especially on the education in part and to find out where these people are. So now from describing all of these things, let's come back to a little bit for you personally, right? Because now you've done how many sessions? How many seances have you, or sessions have you done?
Ceremony.
Yeah, ceremonies. Sorry.
Me personally, or have I worked with veterans on?
You personally, because we're going to just bring it back to you to kind of put the audience into where are they at. And now that you've done some ceremonies, we're going to talk about what's coming up for you and what you do on a daily basis and all these things, basically. So how many ceremonies did you do?
And I will say on the other thing too, of like, we're also looking at other options. So those that are on more of the severe spectrum, it's not hopeless either. You know, we're looking, ketamine therapy is proven to be a very viable option. So what we're about is all these effective options. Let's see how they work and let's see where they are in veterans. So, you know, it's not to like lose hope on anybody. There are going to be a lot more options going forward. For me personally, I've done about 16 ceremonies, which seems like a lot, but given the nature of what I do, you know, I have to go and vet a lot of these retreats and have to just make sure it's something that I would be comfortable recommending somebody else. And so that's sort of my role with that sort of, and there's a lot of people that do way more, but you know, what we try to preach is you want to have this with respect. So a lot of people go and hopefully they have some great ceremonies and then it really gives them that. And a lot of people don't need to return. Some people, if they have especially deep layers of trauma, they might end up returning and get a little bit deeper. But the whole goal is that every time, if they do go, it's for something new. It's for progression. It's for getting a little bit better and not just returning every year for the same exact thing, because then that's on you. You know, trying to get away from this dependency and more on to solutions. And so unfortunately, especially if you space it out, it's all about moderation. Like if you space it out and you're not just, you know, blasting your brain day after day, then all the science shows that it's not detrimental. It doesn't negatively affect it. It can actually be healthy if you do it with intention and you understand what you're doing. And so, you know, what we're trying to teach is like, you don't need this. It can empower you to have this healthy lifestyle in your day-to-day life. But sometimes you need that little tool that if you just can't figure it out, it can get you over that wall. And that's what we're trying to bring this into, sort of that dynamic of just another option if for those that might need it.
Right. Just like you were talking earlier about the layers, depending on how many layers and how deep you need to go, some people could get the benefit of the first four that we send them on, the first ceremonies, and then they're good to go. I've heard of that. I've heard people who've done one ceremony and they healed 20 years of trauma in that. Now, don't take this for granted, guys. Once again, the expectation is very, very different for everybody. And so, but you do four. And once again, like you just said, if you have different layers to go into, you might go back again and sort out at these times, but there's work to be done in between. Like it's not a one shot done and all these things. So now that you've done all these sessions, what's a typical day for Jesse? What does Jesse go on? What are the habits that you incorporated after that makes you healthy today to be able to help other vets?
Yeah, of course. And, none of us are perfect. And so a lot of it is just being patient with your own imperfection and giving yourself a break. And the big thing with a lot of these sort of treatments and the progression is really not necessarily that you are perfect and that you maintain your cycle, but that you can see and you identify right away when you are off your path, right? So it's pretty normal. Like especially like during COVID times, like you get off, you get distracted, you don't go to the gym as much as you did, or you fall off, you find yourself like eating or drinking too much. But then the question is, do you identify and do you course correct, right? And that is the key. None of us are perfect. You got to give yourself a little bit of breathing room, but generally speaking, more often than not, are you making the good decisions? And so, COVID obviously affected a lot of it, but I really try to go to the gym as much as possible. Exercise for me and many of us is key. It is that antidepressant that you can use on a daily basis if you keep up. But it's also hard, like especially gets a little cold out.
It's the first thing we give up, yet it's the first thing we need. I think that physical fitness is the number one thing. It's my number one healing process for everybody that I say, right? That's my first question.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you working out? Yeah, or moving?
Exercise and nutrition, right? And so I try to do that as much as possible. I cook pretty regularly. That way I'm controlling the food, and I'll still eat like a cheeseburger and enjoy the hell out of it, but generally speaking, eat some pretty...
Not a cheeseburger, Jesse. No, not a cheeseburger.
Eat healthy meals, prepare it, but then also have that connection with food. Social life. I'm obviously very busy with this foundation, but my girlfriend and I always, as busy as we both are, okay, this is date night. This is time that we only spend together, no on your phone. Having that social, like, even if I'm crowded, like, oh, I haven't seen this guy, let me go have a beer with John. I haven't seen him for a while. All these things just in social, making sure that you make time for other people, for yourself as well. Just that sort of basic kind of thing. I go on and off of writing. I should do more, but it's another expression. It's another processing. In terms of something that is always a goal to improve is, meditation or taking that breathing, separate time. I'm not great at it. A lot of veterans aren't, because they're just like, why am I sitting here? There's things to be done. But, for me, we all need, like I said, there's no perfection. It's all like, I know this is something I want to do. And so it'll be a continual process for me to push it forward. And for fortunately, through the nature of what I'm doing, this is inherent. But what I push a lot of veterans to do, especially after they go through our program, is, pay it forward, give back. There's very few things that are as beneficial to an individual's mental health as helping other veterans. Obviously, they have to, you have to be selfish. You have to make sure that you're good before you
the
can't
oxygen
give
mask.
more than
the oxygen
right.
mask, Terry. Put the oxygen
Exactly.
mask right on you, and you heal you first. And I haven't seen once anywhere that I've been globally that we haven't helped one veteran that didn't turn around and help 10 others. It doesn't happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of this process, like I was saying, is that mental trauma comes in many different forms, but a pretty commonality of beyond the trauma and beyond the traumatic brain injury side of things is that, when we leave the military, we lose that brotherhood for more often than not, and we lose that sense of purpose. Yeah. And it's very hard on the typical corporate or what have you job to find that sense of purpose, and helping other veterans can really bring that back. You're using your energy, you're using that warrior spirit, that warrior energy for this purpose. And that's what I found a lot of people is almost like they're a caged animal when they go into that civilian world, because they have this warrior energy, they have that like selfless service, like I'm going to charge into whatever. And when you're in a cubicle, like you can't exert that, you can't express that. Right. But through exercise, through helping others, that's how you can reconnect to that core, to that who you are with that purpose, and help other people and really pay it forward. And so that's something we really try to help and push veterans to do as well.
Oh man, that's amazing. Well, Jess, we're coming at the end of this, but before we turn it off and and go on our way here, and we're going to go a little bit like quick shot questions here.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it, because we'll do that, and then we'll give them, we'll let you share one final guidance part at the end, and also where people can reach you and get on their way, because I think you have way more information. We could talk about this for 3 hours, if not for days, which I think we will again at some point with everything that's coming up for Heroic Heart projects. So what can you remember, what was one thing that was holding you back in your transitioning?
Probably just pride, not admitting that I was being held back.
Oh, okay. Pride. Right on. Okay. And what's the best advice you've ever received?
Enjoy the here and now, like take that breath, look around you, and try to just be as present as possible. And even if things are going hard, try to find like what the silver lining to whatever situation.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. What's your one personal habit that contributes to your success?
I think it's just the determination of like, I'm going to just keep going, even if it doesn't seem like there's a pathway there. Just, it's that veteran kind of thing of let's just keep hitting this wall and hopefully a door emerges.
The little engine that could.
Yeah. It's tenacity. It's a uphill battle in a lot of ways. And a lot of us have that. Same with mental health. And you just got to keep going forward. You can't quit.
Oh, awesome. And what would be one growth resource, either an online course, a webinar, that you can share with our listeners that made a big impact on you?
I don't know. There's just a lot of like online educational tools. There's just a lot of like, you can learn new languages. Like a specific website, I can't on the top of my head, but like, especially like these universities like Yale and Harvard, they have these YouTube channels, and always just try to self-improve. Like if you have the time, instead of just binge watching like the next Netflix series, do that, but then also throw in an educational YouTube video. It's always about improving yourself, learning something else, expanding your brain, because again, that's going to help decrease depression and anxiety if you're always putting yourself in a little bit of a challenge mode.
Yeah, growth and contribution are the two ones that keeps us going for sure. What book would you recommend? Your top book?
Man's Search for Meaning. It's
Frankl.
Yeah. That's a good one for veterans. He survived concentration camps, and a lot of his family died, and so it's just his sort of exploration of the craziness of life. I
found that book heavy when you start reading it about everything that he went through. It's a heavy book. Favorite movie and why?
I have to go with I forget what the full name, the second Batman, the Christian Bale Batman.
Oh, the Dark Knight Rises?
Yeah. I don't know. It's Batman, so it's a little silly, but
no, I love it. But why?
I don't know. I think it kind of speaks to that veteran side of like, even if you don't get the praise of self-sacrifice and sort of doing what's right kind of thing.
There's the beauty right there. That's exactly why I asked the why, because we all see different ways, right? We all have filters and everything, but I think that a lot of vets can relate to that. Why we're looking for that, why you signed up. Okay, and in closing, share one piece of guidance, and also the best way, like if you would tell the veterans that are out there, one piece of guidance to kind of send them on their way and how to reach you. Yeah,
it kind of goes back to what I said before of just be present, allow, breathe, and especially with what we're doing, be open. Just because it might seem weird or might seem outside your spectrum, maybe it's not for you, but answers come in unexpected places. So just be open to other people, other experiences, and put yourself in that uncomfortable spot every once in a while, and that's where growth is. Growth never comes from comfort; it comes from discomfort. So that's what I would push people. Yeah, I mean, especially for your audience, we're doing a big push we have a branch in the UK, so HHP UK. We have a lot of hubs in the US, and we're really starting to push, obviously with your help, Bruno, HHP Canada. So, we're trying to help veterans wherever they are. So that's sort of a big thing. So stay tuned for that. Our website is heroicheartsproject.org. There's a lot of information there. If you are a veteran, you can sign up. There's a veteran application there. It's a nonprofit, so it's all based on donations. So if people really want to help veterans, this is showing to be one of the best ways to save veteran life. And your donations go directly there. We're all volunteer, none of us get paid, so it's a direct. This is the most direct way you can actually have your money go to a veteran. We're on all the social media. Main one is Instagram, Heroic Hearts Project or Heroic Hearts Project. And then we also have a ambassador program. So if you're a veteran or a civilian and you just want to help out, but you don't necessarily know how, or you have some sort of expertise and you may not be able to help out monetarily, we are getting groups, local hubs in different areas and empowering these communities to reemerge and support each other, support the veterans, support the other dynamics of it, and really help us push this movement forward. It's not just a Heroic Hearts thing. This is going to benefit all of us, veterans and non-veterans alike.
That's amazing. Jesse, thank you so much for educating us today on ayahuasca, plant medicine. We're so excited about what's coming up. So guys, if you're out there and you're listening and you want to find out more, go on to the sites. I'll put all the sites and the social media handles in the show notes. And you can reach out to Jesse. You can reach out to me to find out about our journey. Keep following us. And Jesse, once again, thank you for answering the call and being on the battle plan.
Thank you. Glad to be there with you.
All right, man. Have a great day.